Hey everyone, Ashley Angeline Kumar, the Confidence Coach. I am a Master Certified Parenting Coach and a Certified Self-Esteem and Self-Confidence Coach for kids. We are going to move on in our series around development, childhood development, and putting a social emotional lens on top of that. So let's move into the age category of 12 to 14, or what we would call early teens, early adolescence, if you want to call it that. I'm going to try not to move so I don't make my camera too blurry. Okay, so characteristics of the age group and basically implications and how to approach the age group, if you have kids in this age group, if you work with kids in this age group, and kind of some of the social emotional pieces that are important. Cool? Let's get into it. So at this age, body is changing. Body probably might have been starting to change around to age 10, depending on when your specific child or group of children went into puberty. So there is an increased sense of self-consciousness happening. Cool. So I personally hit puberty at age 10, which is super young. And I did not have the open, conscious communication with my family about what was happening in my body. And at that time, the sex education wasn't very strong, or early, I should say. Actually, we hadn't even covered some of the stuff, which is why I believe later on, the curriculum changed to address some of these things at age 9 or grade 4. Okay, so they are going to have some possibly questions about their body. They might have worries. They might want to look into different ways of grooming and experimenting, with hair and body and piercings and all kinds of things might be happening now. Now, piercings, age 12 to 14, you get to decide, right? They need adult parent caregiver consent for that, but they are looking at these things, even if it's in other people and not for themselves, but they are looking at them. So we want to have really open communication. So here's my opinion. Start this early. Don't start this in the teenage years, because if we haven't cultivated open, honest communication from childhood, trying to get it to happen with your teenager in the teen years is like you banging your head against the wall, because you're hitting a person who's already starting to go into a self-conscious mode. So they really don't want to have open discussions with a parent who never had or set the foundation for those uncomfortable, possibly, conversations from a young age. So before your children hit the teens, you want to start having those conversations. So we don't want to wait until 12 or 13 or 14, this age group, to start having those open conversations. Cool. I personally didn't get any of those conversations. I learned everything either from friends or on my own, which was hard. And so I really truly believe in open dialogue as a family, starting that early. Now, this can be really uncomfortable for families that are very traditional or conservative. I'm from an ethnic traditional family, so we just didn't have these conversations. So thankfully, I am able to support families with ethnic backgrounds, diverse ethnic backgrounds, in how do we approach these things and what are some of the blocks. So I help parents uncover some of the blocks that prevent them from creating this dynamic in your family so that your kids can come to you and talk to you about these important things. Because if you think about it, who do you want them talking to? Everybody else, and possibly getting misinformation or misguided information from peers, or their parents, the people who've been through it and can be their support system. So you get to decide as a parent which way you're going to go. Cool? So we want to be able to open up ourselves to talk to our children about what's happening in their body, what's happening in their mind, what thoughts, all these kinds of things. They are going to go into comparisonitis. There it is, comparisonitis. They probably might have already started, many kids start comparing themselves to other kids by age 6 or 7. So we want to, again, start that self-empowerment journey early in life, not now. This is not the time to start it. It's never too late, by the way. I'm not going to say don't start it now. Start it now if you haven't. But that self-empowerment journey can really be started way earlier so that we have built the foundation for self-empowerment before children go into this age group, into the teens, which in my opinion, the teenage years are some of the hardest years of life because there's so much happening, and scientifically and biologically, mentally, emotionally, physically, so many things are happening psychologically. So really, really important. Because they're changing in puberty, children are going to be changing at different rates. So kids might be comparing themselves to other kids based on size, development of breasts, facial hair, all these different pieces, and they will be comparing themselves to other kids. It's almost inevitable, even if you've taught your child not to compare to others, because of the evolutionary process we've come through as humans, is to belong to a tribe, and being accepted and approved by tribe members is a really important piece of how we belong. Cool. And so knowing that, we want to be able to empower our children to remember their unique selves, remember their own superpowers, remember their own strengths and characteristics. And strengths exploration is actually something I do with teens that I work with in this age group in coaching. Actually, strengths exploration, by the way, I never got to do as a kid. So it's really, really cool to help coach kids now to explore their strengths and understand their strengths, because then they can understand who they really truly are as they keep going in their teen years. Cool? So we want to have them be able to have a variety of different experiences with a variety of different people, but what the activities we get to do as parents or caregivers or educators is remind them that it's not about everyone else. It's about you in this world and how we fit in and how we belong and how we are unique. So that's a really important piece of information to bring forward, even in your daily language and how you speak to your children. Okay. They are going to have some inferiority complexes possibly. So because of that self-consciousness piece, there might be like a worry and anxiety that sets in around what they can or cannot do, or what they believe they can or cannot do. Again, this is why I believe that foundation needs to start early for believing they can, and self-belief and self-empowerment, so that we're not going into huge struggles at this age around this concept. Cool. And so this is the age group where they want to explore more group time, more peers time with peers, but they're going to be highly influenced by their peers as well. So we also need to be able to help cultivate individual experiences and individual skills. So what are some of the opportunities we can provide our children that help them cultivate some of their strengths and build on their individual skills, right? So I know a lot of kids in this group who are girls, the females, a lot of them, even boys, but it tends to be females, and I don't like to generalize and stereotype like that, but it just, in my practice, this is what I've seen. Baking, kids start exploring cooking, and it tends to be more girls. It's just the way I am seeing the trend, and I think that can change with families, encouraging baking opportunities and cooking opportunities for all genders. But in any case, baking and cooking allows the child to really experience an individual, self-individualized experience, following a recipe, making their own creativity, designing a cake, or whatever it might be. This has been really interesting, I've seen, with this age group of kids doing that, because you're in complete control and you get to decide what goes in and what the outcome is, hopefully, unless it burns in the oven. But they get to develop skills. So what are some of the activities we can do that help them develop their strengths and skills individually? So that's a question to ask. They might have intense sexual feelings towards different genders, and they might be interested in exploring their own body, might be interested in exploring sex and sex processes. And this is why it's really important, again, to have those foundations from an early age, to talk about it, make it really open, talk about these different parts of sexuality. And if you need support on this, it's really important to get support. If you're feeling uncomfortable, if you're feeling you don't know where to start on this, again, really important. Also to communicate with teachers, and what are the kids learning in school, and what are they missing out on? What pieces are they missing out on? And some of the pieces they're missing out on is that emotional, mental piece. They learn the hows, the whats, and the to-dos in sex education classes, but what are some of the beliefs we are going to develop as a family? What are some of the values we have connected to sexual activity and sex in itself, and exploring our bodies? So these are important pieces that don't get explored very often, because it can be so uncomfortable for parents to have these conversations, and they are necessary. Why are they necessary? Because if we don't, and the school's not, where are they going to learn it? From their peers. And how else are they going to learn it? Experimentation. Because they want to explore it. So we need to get really clear about what are we going to communicate with our children around this area, Does it have to be a formal, drawn out experience, or are there informal ways we can guide and coach and speak with our children around this? And I can help support parents with that too. Okay, they might have anxiety around that too. So we want to explore, what is anxiety, number one, and number two, what are the anxiety, what is it wrapped around in this context, whether it's the body or sexual attraction or not being attractive to other genders, and exploring that and having those conversations. Again, self-empowerment as a foundation, super important before the teen years. Okay, again, that's why I work with preteens mostly. I do work with preschoolers and I do work with teens, but I tend to work strongly in this age group of 8 to 12, 13ish, because that's really going to get them, setting the foundation where their brain's processing more logically and really able to hone in on those empowerment pieces so that we can face the teen years. Okay, emotions are going to be up and down because of hormones and changes in the body and lots of stuff happening in this age group, in the teen years in general. So hormones are going to be up and down, and that's normal. What does that mean? Hormones being up and down means emotions are going to be up and down. So it can feel like an emotional roller coaster having a teenager in your house. And I think the biggest piece of that is acceptance and empathy. That my child's not trying to give me a hard time. They are having a hard time. Right? They are gonna, because of these hormones and emotions, they're gonna tend to have more impulsivity and do actions that might be more rash or impulsive, and maybe even succumb to peer pressure in this situation. Again, talking about peer pressure in advance before the teenage years, super important so that we can handle this. Talking about feelings, really developing a foundation of emotional intelligence before the teen years, super important. And what do we do? What are the implications around this? Acceptance of their feelings, validation of their feelings, and knowing the biological truth and psychological truth of this age group, which is things are going to be up and down. And how are we going to show up as parents, willing and accepting of who they are? And how do we show up empathically? And how do we communicate so that we can meet our child's needs when they are having those ups and downs? I'm going to, a little caveat for girls, that with hormonal changes every month, with the period, menstruation happening, empathy, softness, tenderness, love, this can be hard when stuff is all over the place, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, hormonally. And parents, we've got our own stuff to deal with and going on. This is why I truly believe in support, whether you go to therapy, coaching, peer groups, support groups. I do believe in formal support. I think friends, great. If you've got great friends networks that you can, deal with some of these topics with and talk with, great. Otherwise, I find that third party educated approach, and when I say educated, it doesn't mean your friends are not educated. It just means they're coming from a different background where they work with this every day. I find it so helpful. I find it, and that's me as a user of these products and services. Okay. They have a keen desire for independence, and they will need their parents' help, but may struggle in asking for help. Something I spoke with a parent a few days ago about was, from a young age, cultivating, celebrating the idea of asking for help. So if you look at society in general, independence is highly encouraged for little kids, right? Like, oh my God, you did it on your own. Woohoo, you didn't even need any help. You did it great. And we celebrate independence to an nth degree. When somebody asks, now if you think about the same child asking for help, the child goes, can you help me with this? And we just go, okay. And we just kind of show up and do the help thing. When is it that you often hear, or how often do you hear, wow, you asked for help. I'm so proud of you. That's great. It's so great to be able to ask for help and then, process that. So we need to be able to cultivate from an early age, asking for help is okay. Asking for help is important. Asking for help is normal. We all need help and support. Cool. So in my family, we had started that as young as my daughter was 4 4 years old, that asking for help is so important and awesome, and we start celebrating. I really appreciated how you asked for help with that thing. That's something I say to my kids quite often. So offering that same affirmation to this age group when they ask for help, super important. Again, setting the foundation early. So making it okay to ask for help rather than assuming they can do it on their own, or assuming that, if they need help, they'll ask, because they might not ask. They might struggle and suffer in silence because they are afraid to ask for help, or they might feel, because of the self-conscious activity, the self-doubt in the brain, if I'm asking for help, I'm less than, I'm not enough, right? Like, why can't I do this on my own? Like, self-judgment can really creep in here. So we want to really make sure that they can get the help they need, and that it's okay and even celebrated and honored and appreciated when they ask for help. We're having this age group work with or volunteer with older kids and teens and adults can be helpful too. They get to step into leadership, and they get to ask for help when they need to, because a leadership role that they've never been in requires them to get training or get, ask for help when they need it. Volunteer roles are a great way to do this, because there's so many different changing facets that the child might have to navigate. And so asking for help in those situations, so important. So where and how can we cultivate opportunities for our child to ask for help, and where it can be celebrated and honored and be part of the process of growing up? Okay. We want to look at role models. What kind of role models are our children exposed to? Statistics show that many kids look to celebrities, athletes, pretty much that's it. And maybe some of their older cousins and close peers or family members as role models, but they rarely look to their parents as role models, and they rarely look to academics like scientists, highly achieving kids, like I'm thinking Malala Yousafzai, right? Look to them as role models. So we gotta see, who are they being exposed to as role models, and what are they consuming, especially internet content these days. What are they consuming, and who are they watching? Are they watching other teens do crazy challenges that are harmful to their health, or are they watching, programs and videos and shorts related to somebody who's doing important, healthy, inspiring work at their age? Like, I'm thinking, there's many. There's not as many mainstream, I would say. So you've got to look for them. So how do we cultivate the interest in these kinds of role models? Again, I get to help parents with this as well. Okay, they are going to depend on guidelines. They're older and more independent, but they still need guidelines. Now, guidelines includes, what kind of values do you speak of in your family? What kind of boundaries have you set? And is there a democratic process? Is there a democratic process where the child gets to participate in the boundary making in your family and how you operate? Cool? Whether that's screen time, whether that's curfews, whether that's dating, whatever it is. If we have a democratic process, that child feels more involved. They feel like their opinion matters, their voice matters. They feel heard, seen, felt, and understood. If it's simply a parent constantly making the boundaries and the rules and the values, and they have no input, there's going to be less buy-in from your child to be involved in whatever you're asking them to do in terms of boundaries and values. Cool. So I help parents develop their boundaries and values as well. And we get to do, help them support their child in being part of the democratic process involved around that. That's really important. We also want them to be able to have opportunities where they get to make the rules, right? Like, let's say, for example, okay, we have a boundary of cleaning up our room once a week, or, like that's part of our family values of cleanliness and house and home boundaries. But you get to decide how you're going to do it. What supports you're going to use music, you can do it on your own time, you're going to choose the time. So they get to decide. So that's really important. It's kind of like, I'm thinking of how we operate at work, in a work environment. We have a task, but your boss might not necessarily tell you, do it like this. You get to come up with how you're going to do it. I'm just thinking of some cases like that. Now, you're not your kid's boss, but you are their parent guide. Cool? Okay, they are beginning to question authority. Of course. I mean, I noticed that from age 2, so I don't know if this only applies to teens. They will question authority because they want to know where they fit in their world. Where do they fit in their world? And they're going to push some of the boundaries related to authority. So you might have several instances or a few instances, depending on your child, where they cross the boundaries, where they don't just completely negate the boundaries, and they're testing and they're looking and they're seeing how much is going to happen. What's going to happen to me? What is the experience I'm going to have? And they're not doing it consciously. It's subconscious, okay? So they don't know that they're doing this necessarily. Okay, they're going to have the experience of peer pressure mounting from same sex and opposite sex. So we want to have positive influences. We want to talk about peer pressure. We want to have those open conversations. We also want to have the ability to stand up to and voice ourselves to a peer pressure situation. So what kind of discussions are we having? And in this age group, I personally, and I think many of the age groups I work with, keeping it indirect is helpful. So you're watching a show, you see peer pressure happening, you talk about it, but you talk about the characters, not necessarily your child. You might, depending on the context, be like, hey, what would you do in that same situation? Or maybe you talk about yourself first. Hey, if I was in that situation, this is what I would do, because I believe in this particular value, whatever the value is. How about you? Just curious. Again, keeping it light, keeping it casual. Okay, they're gonna look for fun learning experiences. I mean, it's all age groups, but because there's all these emotions and that adrenaline piece starts to come out a little bit more, you can see a lot of it in teenagers where they're looking for a little more adrenaline. And I would say statistically, boys have a higher urge for adrenaline experiences. And girls tend to play it a little more safe, but that's just a gender difference that I don't want to perpetuate. I'm just saying that's statistically what has been noticed by researchers. So we want to encourage, as a family, fun experiences. Why as a family? Because if they're only ever getting those fun experiences outside of the family, that's where they're going to want to go. That's where they're going to want to seek that. So what kind of fun experiences can we cultivate as a family to feed that urge, that need for I want to do something cool and crazy and fun, and have it feel have the experience within the safety of the family, where the family can encourage that experience rather than condemn it or question it or doubt it. So that's something really important to be able to do as a family, as a parent. Okay, because their logical brain has developed more by this age, by age 12, they can handle longer lessons. They can handle longer experiences that involve learning. They can handle things that are way more in-depth and have several steps, okay? So we can offer deeper exploration of concepts, tools, strategies, self-empowerment, deeper exploration of activist things or social or philanthropic things, and leadership roles, in my opinion, very, very, very important. And I have noticed kids flourish when they have the opportunity to step into leadership roles. So how many opportunities are they getting for leadership? They can take on more responsibility in planning and evaluating of themselves and their work and what they're choosing to do. So this is a great time to let that happen. It can be hard for some parents to let go of the reins, and if they choose to do their homework, great. If they don't, okay, you get the consequence is you didn't do your homework. This can be really hard for parents. So they will nag and they will pressure and they will nag and they will pressure to do the activity, do the homework, do the practice, do the whatever it is. But we have to ask ourselves, are we doing our child a disservice in terms of learning here? Can we be okay with the less than perfect circumstances and trust in the lesson that comes from it? So it's a question to be able to ask ourselves. Creating and planning their own social and recreational activities. They probably really want to be able to do this, and I have worked with parents who are still planning activities for this age group. I think it's great to plan your family activities and encourage them to have the planning experiences where they get to control and choose what their social and recreational activities are going to be. Making it a really democratic, involved process where they get to have control of that experience. They may want to avoid difficult tasks, things that involve a lot of energy. Because their body, okay, here's the realistic piece of this. Their body's going through a lot of changes. Mentally, they're going through a lot of changes. Psychologically, emotionally, they're going through a lot. So it makes sense to me why teenagers are tired a lot, why their energies may be low. There's a few things to consider here. Nutrition. Are they getting adequate nutrition? Sleep. Are they getting adequate sleep? Teenage years is where sleep tends to drop because of studying and peer activities. Okay, nutrition, sleep. What's their stress level like? Do they need support with their stress? What's the family connection level like? Are we needing more family connection time, more support, more empathy, more love, more affection? Affection also, by the way, shows up differently in the teenage years, where you might have been cuddling with your 5-year-old and having them sit on your lap. That may not be appropriate for your 12 to 14-year-old. Depends on your family, I guess, and your individual child. So what are different ways where we can show up as parents who can give our child the affection and attention they need in the way they need it, rather than the way we want to give it to them? And having an open conversation about, what does that look like? How can I affectionately show you or support you? Affectionately show you my love, affectionately support you. How do we do that? What does that look like? Let me know. And if it's not okay, just tell me. Like if a pat on the shoulder or, arm around the waist is not acceptable anymore, let me know. We're going to find other ways. And we highly value connection and affection in our family. So we want to keep that flow going. And you can talk about the science here because they can handle the science at this age. Oxytocin is the connection hormone, and that comes through touch and closeness and eye to eye and heart to heart experiences. Cool. All right. What was I saying? They avoid difficult tasks. Yeah, so many different things are happening for them. They're also going to want to do what their friends are doing. So if friends are just chilling and relaxing, that's probably what they're going to want to do. They might want to do things that involve less energy output. Okay, so we get to understand that. If we understand that, we can move towards acceptance of that and then offer them the same tasks. We don't necessarily have to change the difficult tasks. We can still offer them the same tasks, but offer it to them in smaller chunks, or chunks that are suitable for them, or give them autonomy in how the task is completed, so they have more control and choice in the matter. They're going to avoid it if they have less control, less autonomy, less choice, less freedom around the task that's being given to them. So those pieces are really important. We want them to be able to experience success in the tasks too. So are we setting them up for failure because it's too much for them, for your individual child? Or are we setting them up for success by giving the task to them in a way that their mind-body system can handle? So neurodivergent individuals are going to have task aversion differently than neurotypical people. Cool? All right. We want to continue to explore diversity. I think this is important to explore from a young age, so you set the foundation. Continue exploring outside of your community bubble, outside of your neighborhood bubble, outside of your religious community bubble, and look at different experiences outside of that to see how the world is bigger and broader than what we have grown up in necessarily, right? To have different diverse experiences can be super important for opening up their mind and heart to different opportunities and different ways of looking at things, different perspectives. I think perspective is so important in the teenagers because we can get real stuck in a certain way because we've developed a certain way of thinking since childhood. So the more we have these diverse experiences, we can open up ourselves to different perspectives as a teenager. Okay, this is the age their make-believe fantasy is starting to drop, but it might change over into something else, a more adult version like sci-fi. And how do we encourage that, and how do we understand that? So are we encouraging our 12-year-old to go play dolls, or have we learned that that's not what they necessarily do anymore and they do something different now? So learning our kids' interests, very important. They get to feel understood and like they matter, like my parent takes an interest in me. That the felt feeling of that is so important for a child to develop healthy self-esteem. Cool. Okay, they might be unclear about their needs and values too at this age group because they're leaving behind childhood and heading into young adulthood. So they might be questioning themselves, like, why do I want to swing on the swings? None of my friends do, but I still have this urge to swing on the swings. What is that about? Again, having open dialogue to talk about proprioceptive input and what does that mean? Proprioceptive input is how our body moves in space. Some of us like rocking and swinging, and there's different activities, and that's okay. Again, honoring the child's experience, really important. And we want them to gain more significant social and relational skills. So this is when children start to think about relationships and possibly careers, right? So how do we do that? Are there opportunities to interact with all different ages? Are there opportunities to interact with people outside of your normal bubble, your normal group of people that you tend to interact with? And what kind of social and relational skills might the child be lacking that we can support them with, or that they might need professional support with? So these are questions to consider. Okay. I hope that was helpful. Let me know what you got from it. Send me an email, send me a comment, drop something. If you're seeing this on social media, let me know. And there is a lot more. Obviously, these are just small tendencies for these different age groups. And next, we're going to move into middle teenage years, 15 to 18, or I guess middle adolescence, if you want to call it that. And we'll talk more about that next time. Bye. Thank you for watching.